When you see the words sugar-free or zero calorie or maybe keto-friendly on a label, what do you think? Most people assume that this is going to be that healthier choice, right? Can significantly increase the risk of heart attack and stroke. What the researchers were finding is that there are substances, additives in ultra-processed foods that can actually knock out some of these healthy gut bacteria. What are my practical tips for you and how to be aware and dodge these artificial sweeteners that can actually have adverse effects that are actually to be harmful to you? Well, number one, I want to start with the sugar substitute called, it's a mouthful and it's difficult to spell, erythritol. This is an artificial sweetener that you're going to find in sugar-free drinks and candy, keto snacks, low-carb baked goods that you might find in a grocery store, flavored waters, protein powders, for athletes. And now protein is such a big trend. Watch out for what's actually in that can or a bottle. And even you can find erythritol in some dietary supplements. And if a product is labeled zero sugar or keto friendly, there's a good chance that it contains some erythritol. But here's what you need to know. Researchers are looking at erythritol for their health implications, and they've discovered that erythritol can significantly increase the risk of heart attack and stroke. Now, that's actually a big statement to make, but it's a big finding. And the study that's been looking at this that I want to talk about is coming from Cleveland Clinic's Lerner Institute. And in the study, the researchers gave healthy volunteers erythritol in the amounts that you would typically find in a sugar-free drink or snack. And here's what they found, that when they gave the subject erythritol, same amount that you get in a drink or a snack, boom, you ate it, the blood levels erythritol spiked 1,000-fold, as high as from the beginning. So this is a substance that when you eat it, gets right into your bloodstream. And if it gets into your bloodstream, some of you may have heard me talk about this, our bodies contain 60,000 miles worth of blood vessels. And these are the highways and byways of health. And they bring everything that we eat or drink, and including the things that are not so good for us, in this case, erythritol, they'll deliver to every single organ and every single cell in the body, 1,000 times spike. All right. And what was concerning in these human subjects is that while the erythritol was in their body, their blood platelets, now these are tiny little cell-like particles that are in our blood, their platelet activity, meaning the platelets got activated significantly. Platelets are basically cell fragments that are naturally found in our blood. So when you donate blood, there's platelets in there. And the natural job of the platelet is to help form blood clots when you're injured. When you have any kind of injury, right? Cut yourself in the kitchen or the kitchen knife, scrape your knee, falling off a bike or whatever, okay? You get some bleeding. And the reason the bleeding stops is because the platelets rush to the scene, race to the scene, and they become activated. And that activated platelet begins to form a clot, right? So activated platelets form clots. People who ate a lot of erythritol, but a lot meaning what you get in a normal snack, actually had activation of their platelets. Now, to me, that is a red flag that gets immediately sent up. Now, when the platelets become too active, as in this case, like erythritol cause, all right, what happens is that the platelets that wouldn't normally clot start to form little clots in the body. Just what you don't want. This is dangerous because if you wind up actually triggering blood clotting, you can actually interfere with blood flow to the organs when the clot forms in the blood vessels that are trying to feed organs your oxygen and nutrients through your blood. Now, when the blood clots happen in your heart, that is a heart attack. When a blood vessels clot in your brain, your platelets are activated in your brain circulation. All right, there's 400 miles worth of blood vessels in your brain. Clots form there. Guess what? That is a stroke. Really, really eye-opening to think about something that we would eat that's so common could potentially be linked to activating platelets that could cause this problem. Now, most people probably could have some, as most people do, without a big problem. But think about the people who are at highest risk for heart attack or stroke, right? That's something to think about. The other thing that's interesting is that the researchers also looked, besides erythritol, they wanted to compare it to just plain old regular table sugar to see if sugar would actually activate the platelets as well, right? Is this a sugar and sugar substitute effect? Guess what the answer is? Nope. This was not caused by regular sugar activating platelets, increasing the clotting, but it was found in erythritol, but not normal sugar. All right, so We hear about all the so-called harms of regular sugar. Here is a sugar substitute that really should open your eyes to maybe a problem that you want to actually dodge, right? So just because something was found even through a blood sample from people who had erythritol, the real question is, did we actually see human clinical correlations? In other words, was there a natural problem that was found in humans? So basically, they also looked at people who actually had high erythritol levels, okay, who were consuming a lot of erythritol, and those who consume the most erythritol had twice the risk, 2 times the risk of having a heart attack or stroke over 3 years that the clinical study was conducted. So you got an observation that just feeding erythritol at normal snack and drink doses could actually activate the platelets. And then when you looked at people, okay, and see how they did it over 3 years, yep, actually there was an increase in exactly what that platelet activation would cause, which is heart attack and stroke. So here's the thing. Most things that we eat, our body will metabolize really fast to try to get rid of any toxins and anything harmful, right? Because it sounds like this might be a harmful thing. But guess what? Your body does not metabolize erythritol very well. Erythritol enters the bloodstream, it lingers in your tissue, and then eventually it'll exit through your urine. You'll pee it out, all right? But guess what? If you have repeated exposure to erythritol day after day, week after week, that could cause those levels of erythritol to build up in your tissues and in your bloodstream over time, right? And that would not be a good thing for your platelets, all right? So remember, erythritol has been shown to activate platelets, which would actually increase blood clotting, and has been found to correlate erythritol consumption with a 2-fold increase in having heart attack or stroke. Something to be careful about in my book. Here's another one. The common artificial sweetener called xylitol, all right, also linked to similar effects as erythritol. Now, where do you find xylitol? Sugar-free gum, right? I mean, most of us have grown up surrounded by sugar-free gum. Some forms of peanut butter actually have xylitol to sweeten it. Mouthwash, toothpaste might actually have xylitol as well. Watch out. All right. And by the way, just so you know, a lot of people might know this if you have a dog and you've spoken to your veterinarian. Xylitol is very toxic to dogs. If you have a pet dog, you don't want xylitol around. It can cause their blood sugar to plummet dangerously because they actually overproduce insulin. Now, this doesn't happen in humans, but it's just another reason to be aware that xylitol is not just a sweetener that does stuff to bodies, including dogs' bodies. You might be saying, well, I bet erythritol and xylitol are marked somewhere as having a potential danger to some people at least. But guess what? Both of those substances, artificial sweeteners, erythritol and xylitol, are considered generally regarded as safe. Generally, G regarded R as a safe S called GRAS, GRRAS, by the FDA. At least historically, that's how it's been considered. And the reason is because you get a little tiny bit of erythritol and you can get a little bit of tiny xylitol that are naturally occurring in fruits and vegetables, but nowhere near what you would actually have it in ultra-processed foods. All right, so we are not talking about the trace amounts you'd find naturally in nature. We're talking about concentrated, high-dose forms that you find concentrated in artificially sweetened products that people consume every single day. And this actually brings me to another point, which is that the dose of what we have actually matters, right? Have a tiny little bit, rarely, probably you're going to bounce right from that. It's not going to cause any real problems. You have a high amount, day after day in, day out, week after week, year after year. Guess what? That's where the problems are actually going to come in, all right? But we tend to be creatures of habit when we actually eat and drink things. So this is why you need to know about this latest research and think twice when you're about to buy something that might have erythritol or xylitol in it. Okay, what are my practical tips for you and how to kind of be aware and dodge these artificial sweeteners that can actually have adverse effects that actually could be harmful to you? Well, number one, anything anything that you're going to buy in a box or a bag or a can or a tin, especially the stuff in the middle aisle of the grocery store, read the labels carefully. I can't emphasize that enough. Whatever you pick up, take a look at the side, look at the label. By my book, what I would recommend is avoiding products that contain erythritol and xylitol, especially if it's in a protein bar or sugar-free drink or a keto product. And by the way, you can actually find a safer sweetener, right? Raw honey is safer. Maple syrups is a safe sweetener. Monk fruit's a sweetener. And stevia is also a natural sweetener, but you got to be careful about stevia because some types of stevia actually do have stevia in it, but they're also doctored up with some of these artificial sweeteners because stevia is kind of expensive. And by the way, even a small amount of regular table sugar is safer than some of these artificial alternatives. All right, if you want a sweet hit for your palate or your brain, you can get that sweet hit by eating a whole food. Fruits, vegetables, all right? All naturally sweet. Most of them are naturally sweet. Think about this like there's nothing I like more than a juicy, sweet orange in the morning. Or you want to think about it like a juicy pear in the summertime or peach in the winter. But when you eat a whole foods, you can get Mother Nature's sweet sugar hit, sweetness hit, without actually having to resort to the artificial sweeteners. All right, so the study I just told you about is a wake-up call. Sugar-free doesn't always mean risk-free. Now, if erythritol can affect your heart and your brain, what about your gut? There are other researchers that are taking a look at what's the effect of artificial sweeteners on gut health. We know that gut health, which is really basically the health of your healthy gut bacteria, your microbiome, the 39 trillion bacteria that live inside our gut, mostly in our colon, we know that the gut is connected to the brain, the immune system, your healing capacity, your stem cells, lots of things our gut is actually connected to. And researchers from Brazil at the State University of Campinas in Brazil looked at how food additives and artificial sweeteners affect healthy gut bacteria. You may have seen me talk about some of the healthy gut bacteria, but I would just tell you to remind you they have really, really long, complicated names. Don't worry about trying to memorize the names, but leave it to people like me that can pronounce them even. Lactobacillus, Bifidobacterium, Lactococcus. All right, these are just 3 bacteria that are very healthy and have been studied. These are friendly gut bacteria helpful that help you digest food, fight off bacteria and viruses. And by the way, these bacteria, Lactobacillus, Bifidobacteria, and Lactococcus, they produce anti-inflammatory compounds that lower inflammation in our body too, right? All good. What the researchers were finding is that there are substances, additives in ultra-processed foods that can actually knock down or knock out some of these healthy gut bacteria, all right? And some of the biggest offenders, you might be surprised, potassium sorbate. Go ahead, take a look in your pantry of something that's ultra-processed or a bag of something and take a look at the ingredient label. See if you find potassium sorbate, sodium benzoate, very common additive, sodium sulfite, another very common additive, saccharin, very common artificial sweetener, and polyorbate 80. This is a thickener. You're going to find this on a lot of foods. All right? Potassium sorbate, sodium benzoate, sodium sulfite, saccharin, and polyorbate 80. All right, now that might seem like a mouthful, but I guarantee you probably have something in your kitchen. Maybe you have a lot of things in your kitchen that will contain one or more of those additives. They didn't just reduce the population of good bacteria, Lactobacillus, Bifidobacterium, okay, bacterium, and Lactococcus, but the ones that they didn't knock out, they actually impaired their function. They reduced the number and then they crippled the ones that were left. Not good, right? And by the way, saccharin, artificial sweetener, and potassium sorbate preservative significantly reduce the production by your healthy gut bacteria of short-chain fatty acids. These are SCAF fatty acid, ASCFA. We sometimes call them SCAFAs for short, acetate, propionate, butyrate. You've probably heard other people talk about this, but potassium sorbate and saccharin, very common in ultra-processed foods. They actually reduce the production of these healthy anti-inflammatory products that your normal gut bacteria actually makes. And by the way, these short-chain fatty acids not only lower inflammation, they support your gut lining strength. You don't want leaky gut. You need these short-chain fatty acids, and they support your immune health, right? These are the super soldiers in your body that protect you against invaders from the outside, bacteria and viruses. And inside your body, they protect you against invaders inside, like cancer. What about polyorbate 80? That's an emulsifier or a thickener if you want to just have everyday speak. An emulsifier is just a thickener that's put in the foods, right? That's found in ice cream and salad dressings, a lot of baked goods. Guess what? Polyorbate 80 was linked to increased intestinal permeability. What does that mean in English? Increased gut leakiness. You don't want that. All right. Now, why is having a non-leaky gut important for your health? Because your gut actually is sealed off. So whatever goes through the gut, which is the food you eat, the digested matter that goes further down your gut and ultimately is poop. You want everything to stay in that tube and not leak out. When the gut is leaky, guess what? All that stuff comes out into your body really bad. When the gut barrier is compromised, stuff leaks out. You get chronic inflammation. Not surprising when I tell you about all that stuff in your guts are leaking out. Weakened immunity. All right. So your immune system goes down. Now you're more vulnerable for a whole range of chronic diseases, including potentially cancer. Got to be careful about this. Like, this is what we're learning about how important our immune system is linked to our gut health, and that leaky gut, really not a good thing. So what are your practical tips? Number one, again, read the label. Check that ingredient label. Look for things that you might not want to add to your body that I've just told you about. Potassium sorbate, sodium bulfate, sodium benzoate, saccharin, polyorbate 80. Actually, when you look for those things, you're going to find it's not that easy to avoid them because they're so common everywhere. And this is what sort of the wake-up call for us is, not just to, say that we can avoid ultra-processed foods. It's really to avoid some of the ingredients that might be present in some of them. You might have some processed foods that are actually better than others because they don't have these elements. And by the way, what do these additives do? They make foods have a very, very long shelf life. If something looks like it can stick around for months or years, and you know that food shouldn't last that long, it probably has one of these kinds of additives in it. All right. And also these hard to pronounce ingredients. If you can't pronounce it, it's probably not that great for you. Okay, back to the sweeteners, right? So, practical tip. How do you sweeten your food if you don't want to use saccharin or erythritol or xylitol? Okay, just look for foods that are naturally sweetened. Honey, maple syrup, stevia, monk fruit, make sure it's pure stuff. Those are actually fine. And by the way, some of the juices that you can squeeze out of a fruit also have natural sweeteners as well. What you want to do is you want to protect your healthy gut bacteria at all times. Fiber-rich foods. Eat foods with a lot of fiber. Tree nuts, walnuts, pecans, macadamia, all right, broccoli, avocados, kiwi. All these things are a good source of dietary fiber. All right, lots of vegetables, fruits and vegetables, legumes, great source of dietary fiber and protein and micronutrients and minerals. Legumes, what are they? Beans, white beans, black beans, pinto beans, you name it, lentils, chickpeas. It's soybeans. They're all going to have all these good things that help feed your gut microbiome. And whole grains, ancient grains, whole grains, it's all going to be better for you rather than the ultra refined stuff that most of us grew up with. When you actually eat these whole foods that help feed your gut bacteria, make them healthy ones grow more healthy bacteria. Guess what? It supports your body, your gut bacteria's production of short chain fatty acids. SCAFAs, healthier bacteria, more SCAFAs, short chain fatty acids, more beneficial benefits, lowering inflammation, better sealing of the gut lining, better immune strength, all the things that you want for long-term health. There are some very specific foods I've been studying research that can really support good production of SCAFAs. You want to know what they are? Chori root, garlic, onions. Those actually have been studied by researchers, and they're really good for producing short-chain fatty acids in your gut, right? Remember, your gut is a foundation to your health. The more you support your gut health, the better your overall body health is going to be as well. So far, we've looked at how artificial sweeteners and additives that are in ultra-processed foods can affect your heart, your brain, and your gut. I want to come back to the brain because not only do we want to avoid stroke, all right, but artificial sweeteners actually can have a different kind of effect on the brain. And I want to talk about that because the two artificial sweeteners I want to talk about, very, very common, can have an effect on your brain. One is called sucralose, also sometimes found as Splenda. That is an artificial sweetener that's about 600 times sweeter than normal table sugar. No wonder, actually, companies will use it. Don't have to use regular sugar. A little bit of that 600 times sweetener. And sucralose was approved by the FDA in 1999. That's more than 2 decades ago, 20 years ago. And since then, it's found its way into all kinds of foods that we encounter, right? Diet sodas, coffee syrups that are very sweet. Think about that drive-through and you want the seasonal something or other coffee that's sweetened, it's got some syrup in it, might have sucralose in it. Sugar-free ketchup, sugar-free barbecue sauce, like in the quest to develop local sugar-free foods, the food manufacturers have actually been, taking these rather remarkably sweet artificial substitutes for sugar, throwing them in there, thinking that they're going to help us dodge more calories. But guess what? There are unanticipated, unored side effects, collateral damage that now we begin tying to some of the chronic diseases that we want to dodge. By the way, what else is sucralose? Low-calorie salad dressings, protein powders, chewing gum, even some whole wheat breads and cereals, and things you might want. Even that, make sure you look at the ingredient label. Now, sucralose does contain 0 calories, but guess what? Once you eat it, it gets into your bloodstream. It lingers around. It loves to hang out in body fat. And by the way, sucralose, after you eat it, has even been found in breast milk. Now think about that. Now you're feeding an infant, right? So there's a new study that shows that sucralose can actually affect your brain and your brain's control of appetite as well. Okay, so this is the research from the KEK School of Medicine at the University of Southern California. And what they did is they ran a study on 74 healthy adults, 37 women, 37 men. These were people that were in the first half of their lives, age 18 to 35, so young people. And they were assigned to be one of 3 groups. Had a drink sweetened with sucralose, which is what we're interested in. One had a drink that was sweetened with real sugar, and one had sucralose and carbs, right? So basically, that was intended to say, like, if you're going to have food that has carbs in it, bowl of pasta, and a diet soda with sucralose, drink it together. What's going to happen? Because the carbs are actually from the food are going to gang up with sucralose, right? Which doesn't have a caloric effect. What's going to happen? So in this particular case, they weren't looking at blood sugar. They were looking at brain activity. So researchers subjected the patients, the subjects, to functional MRI. Now, some of you may know an MRI is kind of taking a picture of your body at a pretty high resolution. You get pretty clear images. But functional MRI actually gives you a sense of what's going on while the picture is being taken. It's dynamic. And you can observe brain activity using functional MRI. So that's what these researchers did. They gave people either sucralose plus carbs, a carb meal, or just a drink with plain sugar, okay? And they were looking at the area of the brain that's responsible for reward and appetite control. And here's what they found. Sucralose by itself did not activate the brain's reward center when you hit like the way normal sugar did. So when you have normal sugar, you activate the reward center and there's a feedback. Basically, it's like, all right, you're getting your reward now. We got some of it. We don't keep on needing it. The brain with sucralose did not activate the satisfaction signal that would shut down your drive. In fact, it just made you kind of dodge that and you just keep on eating it. Sucralose plus carbs actually blunted the brain's ability to say that you're full. That's interesting, right? Because if you're eating food with a bunch of carbs and you're having a beverage in this case in the research that has sucralose, guess what? Your brain should normally at some point say, all right, guys, let's slow down. We got enough now. Here, adding the sucralose on a carb meal actually allows you to skip that fullness. So you just keep on eating. That's interesting. All right, so you're eating more sucralose. Brain doesn't get the message you're full. You keep eating, stuffing more calories in your system, overloading your metabolism over time. What does that lead to? If you're somebody who drinks a lot of sugar-free diet sodas with sucralose and you eat a lot of high carbs, you're going to overeat. It makes you more likely to have weight gain, insulin resistance, and metabolic dysfunction. That's basically where your metabolism, the energy generating system of your body, gets derailed. Now your blood sugars rise. Now you become pre-diabetic. Now you gain body fat. Blood pressure goes up. All kinds of badness can actually happen. So sucralose can affect the part of your brain that affects hunger, and then you can actually easily overeat. What about the gut microbiome? Guess what? Sucralose, like the other artificial sweeteners we talked about, erythritol, xylitol, okay, sucralose also damages the gut microbiome and increases inflammation and puts stress on your healthy gut bacteria. So, what is a healthy takeaway from this part of the video? Well, I'm going to repeat it again. Read your labels. Look for sucralose, all right? It is found in way more products than most people realize. You can find it in salad dressings, in yogurt, in flavored waters, in gum, chewing gum. I told you baked goods, cereals, protein powders. Got to check out this stuff because especially protein powders, made by the supplement companies or fitness companies, they're all well-intentioned. They do have protein in, but in order to make it palatable, they throw stuff in it like sucralose. So just check the ingredient label and you'll pick it up. That's it for now. I hope you found this helpful.